What's up, XPT family? This month, we're taking a deeper dive into the science of performance. As you know, we believe that performance carries over into all areas of life. So we need to make sure that our training optimizes the way that we move for all of life's activities. So in this series, we're gonna break down a few of our favorite unconventional training methods. We'll teach you why it's important to incorporate these into your training program, and I'm gonna break down how to perform the exercises correctly. Let's get into our first exercise. This exercise is called a Landmine Rotational Press. I'm going to show you how to do the movement first, then I'll break down why this is so important and why we like to incorporate it into our training programs, and how you can program this into your own training. So I have a landmine set up here, a landmine attachment to my squat rack. If you don't have a landmine attachment, you can also just put the bar into a corner, or you can get attachments that just go on the floor. I'm going to set up perpendicular from the landmine. So I've got my barbell. I can have plate loaded on this barbell, but right now I'm going with the empty bar for demonstration purposes. A couple important things here with the setup. I want to make sure that I'm grabbing the end of the barbell and I have my hand right next to my shoulder. So my hand is right next to my outside shoulder. My elbow is packed in tight, so everything's in nice and tight here. I'm going to set up my feet. I've got my feet about an athletic stance, just outside of shoulder width. And then I'm going to take a small step back with this inside foot. You don't have to do this, but this is my preferred setup for this exercise. So if I really measure these out, I have my toe about in line with the heel of my outside leg here. So what I'm doing here is I'm opening up a little bit of space for my hips to be able to rotate a little bit better. From this position, I'm going to make sure my weight is on the balls of my feet. So my heels are barely touching the ground, especially this outside heel. I like to actually start with this outside heel slightly off the floor. I'm gonna use a little drive from my legs because this is a rotational press movement. So I wanna create a little rotation from the floor, through my hip, through my torso, and then eventually coming out my arm and pressing with this outside arm. So barbell starts at my shoulder. I'm gonna drive through this foot, twist as I press up, bring it back down under control, nice and slow. Again, watch as I rotate the foot, the knee, the hip, my torso, and then eventually up through the arm. And I'm turned towards the bar as I press up overhead. Now I can increase the speed a little bit. I like to load this moderately heavy and actually use a little bit more drive, so it's more of an explosive movement. So I'm going to drive with the outside leg. Notice that little click I'm hearing of the barbell. That's a good signal to me that I'm creating enough power in that movement. I'm finishing with my arm locked out and my body is nice and straight and stacked up. Notice you can't see my head because my bicep is right by my ear, and there should almost be a nice straight line all the way down from my shoulder, through my torso, through my hip, and through this back foot. And you can see my heel has rotated out so that I've created that straight line and brought that hip with me. So that is the Landmine Rotational Press. Now, super important for us to be able to rotate. A lot of movement in life happens in this transverse plane, requiring me to be able to rotate my hips. And what I notice with a lot of people is people suck at rotating. So this is a great exercise even to just start teaching your body how to rotate and sequence movements from the ground through my hip, through my upper body, because that's how we create force, whether I'm punching or if I'm throwing, that's how we create a lot of force. So being able to sequence that with my body is super important. So the way I like to program this into the training, I typically will do somewhere between 3 to 4 sets, and I like to keep the reps somewhere in the 6 to 10 rep range, depending on how heavy I'm going. If I'm going for a little bit more patterning and just learning the movement, then I'll go in the 10 rep range. For me, I typically load it a little bit heavier, and I'll either go explosively for power, in which case I'm doing about 6 reps, or if I'm going a little more for strength, then I'll program 8 reps, and it might be a little bit slower, but the movement has to be driving through the foot, making sure I turn that heel out as I rotate or squash a bug under my foot, get that rotation of the hip through the core, through the torso, and then eventually coming up out the arm. That's the Landmine Rotational Press.